Alright, so this is my first real inspection and feeding of the year, and I have big plans this year, so I have a lot of things going on. So we can see my normal bucket of stuff, smoker and everything. You can also see a hive body full of green frames and feeders and a feeding bucket. So what my plan is to feed all the bees sugar syrup, pollen patties potentially, put in drone comb, which are those green comb, and equalize some of the weaker split hives. And I want to get everything as ready as I can this month because this is when the bees are really getting to go, and I want to get them ready for splits and queen rearing this year. I'm not sure what I'm really walking into. I know these two hives that you just see with the rocks on it are a little weaker than the other two, but I haven't really dug in there to see how things are going. So it's time to really take a look. This bucket that I'm hauling is 4 gallons of sugar syrup. It's pretty darn heavy, and I've been dealing with back issues, so this thing was not fun to lug around. So when I was getting ready, I just walked everything out to about 15 feet away from the hives, and I can do that without any protective gear. And then when I get closer, I'll put the full-on jacket on and bring everything up. And that's just in case the bees are being extra aggressive today, which they shouldn't be, but since this is like, one of the first warm days, better check it out. The weather's been crazy. We've had snow one week, 70 degrees the next, snow in the next week, and all that could be pretty problematic for bees because they think the warm weather means it's time for spring and get ready, but then it freezes and they can't get out and eat, and so they can overpopulate and starve themselves. So it's pretty touch and go sometimes. So this is the hive that prompted me to do emergency feeding last month, and I did a mountain camp, which was just a piece of paper and sugar. And you can see the few white strips of paper, but there's no sugar left. So in a month, they ate all the sugar that I gave them, which is good. It's good that I'm here now, and it's good that they ate it all. So I'm going to go ahead and set this down. And this hive is not, I could tell it was weak when I first opened it, and it still looks weak, but I really want to know if this one has a laying queen and just get a good feel for what's going on in there. So I'm going to chuck all this paper off. The bees will, normally they just chew it up and they'll take it out, but they left those big strips, which is a sign that they're not super active or maybe even super healthy. So now I'm going to pop out frames from the outside in, just that's the normal way I work them. And in general, what I need to do is make space for one of these green drone combs. So I'll go ahead and put the feeder in that box there because that's where that's going to live. And I'm trying to make room for this frame, and I'm not sure what to do with it, so I'll chuck it on the ground. But here's the green drone comb, and drone comb's just larger. The honeycomb inside is larger, and that's to accommodate the larger drones. And drone comb's really just a aesthetic thing. The bees will make the wax they need to for them, but this gives them a designated place for it instead of just spreading it out throughout the rest of the hive. And so that's the green drone comb being put in. I'm going to put one of those in every single one of the boxes because they're about to start making drones in anticipation for swarm season, which would be towards the end of this month. So now it's time for me to really look and see what's going on in this hive. So we've got the wax on that side and nothing on the other, and there's really nothing in there. So that's not entirely surprising. But again, seeing like no bees on it, again, just shows how weak this hive is. It doesn't mean that they won't recover and they won't be strong in a month, but right now they're pretty bad off. So again, nothing on this frame. And these wooden frames are from the nuke that they originally came in, or the nuke that I originally bought bees from and then split from. I don't normally have these wooden frames. I don't really care for them very much. No particular reason, I just keep it all the same. So there you can see some capped, I think, honey. But again, nothing really going on these frames. But you can also see where all the bees are collected towards the left there. Normally they're in the middle, so it's a little weird that they're here. When I come back to really get the hive situated and put queen excluders on, I'll rearrange all this. So there's more food. And I can also begin to see here pollen, and I think I can even begin to see a little bit of brood happening. But I'm just trying to see if there's signs of life. And you can also see just tons of hive beetles. Hive beetles can be a problem for weak hives, but are typically not a problem for strong hives. So seeing that many, again, it's a weak hive. They're probably having a hard time dealing with them. And that's going to convince me not to give them pollen patties. One of the problems with pollen patties is hive beetles love it. So I'm not going to give them one considering how many beetles are there and how weak the hive is. I don't want to give the beetles an edge. But I do want to give this hive something to help it rebound. So now I'm pulling up this frame, and this is the one that's got a lot of stuff going on. So now this one has capped brood. This one has pollen. This one has a lot of the stuff I'm hoping to see. So this tells me that the queen is alive. She's starting to lay. There's food in here. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, this hive has a chance. So now can I give it an edge? But here's the new game. Let's see if we can spot a queen here in just a minute. We're gonna be pulling a frame that has a queen on it, and you'll get a chance to see if you can see her. And just for fun, I'll slow it down so you have more time to see her. And I will say she was not the easiest to spot, but I did see her and I wanted to point her out, but I was worried I'd drop the frame. So here we go. She'll be on this frame, and let's see if you can find her. While we do that, I'll tell you kind of how my plans are thinking for the year. So there's two things I want to do. One is I want to maybe double my apiary, so go from 4 hives to 8, but I also want to raise queens, and that's pretty resource intensive. So both relate to timing and combining and splitting hives, so I have to think about the logistics of it, but for sure a prerequisite is strong hives. So this hive, if it doesn't recover quickly, could be a bit of an issue. So I want to get this one as strong as I can and either decide to split it or use it to raise queens with later. So again, this one, I've got food, I've got capped brood. Those will all be emerging as new bees in the next 4 to 6 days. And so this hive is trying to recover, it's just a little behind. And so if it can get going, then I think it'll be just fine, but it's one of those things where you want the biggest, healthiest hives because they're the most productive. And so you hope they can bounce back quickly and not just be kind of slow and sluggish the whole year. That just makes it awkward, like, should I combine it? Should I do this? Should I do that? So I'm hoping they'll just bounce back really quick. Okay, here we go. Let's play Spot the Queen. It's time for slow-mo. I'll give you a hint. She's in the bottom. And she's walking to the left. She's about dead center in the screen, but surrounded by bees. Did you find her? She's up towards the middle. Okay, time's up. I wish I could draw on it and show you exactly where she is if you didn't see her, but hey, sometimes you see her, sometimes you don't. The more important thing is, can you tell she's alive? Okay, so I've looked at this. This hive has good signs, but not strong yet. So now I've had to make the decision to equalize, and that is to say, take something from another hive that is stronger and give it to this hive. I don't often like to leave multiple hives open at a time. I just get nervous about how feisty the bees will get, but it's part of it. So that's why I have multiple hives, is so I can use the resources of one to help another. And here you're just watching me try to move everything. It is all just gummed up with rack wax and propolis. It is really hard to move this stuff. Another time when the bees are a little nicer, maybe in the middle of the season, I'll scrape some of that stuff off so it'll move a little more smoothly. Okay, so now I'm going to open up another hive. And so this is the hive. This is my favorite hive. This is the star of the show. It is the most productive. When they're happy, they're the gentlest. When they're unhappy, they're the meanest. But this is the hive that I want to make queens from. So if I'm going to steal resources, my best bet will be from this hive because it tends to be the best. When all the others were struggling to make 1 box of honey, this one made 3 or 4. This is wax and that they built on top. Again, like super productive hive, they built all this wax while the others were struggling to do anything. They were just like, we'll fill all this stuff up. So they're really productive bees, and that's why I want to use them as sort of the hive I'm going to steal for resources. You could make the argument that I shouldn't steal from the best hive, I shouldn't try to build the best hive, but that's not how I'm thinking about it right now. I'm thinking this hive likely has the most resources to give, and I'm not worried about them rebounding. So I'll put the feeder in, and now normally, you know, I would take off this box and set it right on top of the cover, but I can't because all that wax is there. So I'm sitting here thinking, where am I going to set this? And it's an important decision because there's no queen excluder preventing a queen from being up in these top frames. So I don't want to just set her on the ground where if the queen is in there, she falls into the leaves and is gone forever. I want to put this box somewhere where if the queen falls out of this, I will very likely be able to find her and get her. And so normally that would be the lid, but all that wax is there, so I'm going to just set it on the lid of this other hive for now. Far from perfect, you know, she could fall off the edges, but that's the best I've got for right now. So already you can see in here, there's just a lot more bees going on here. You can also tell there's no paper. Unlike the other one that had the strips of paper, there's none here. That means the bees chewed it all up. It's all gone. You'll be able to see a little bit of it down here, and I'll try to fish it out. But again, we're going to pull a frame just to make room. I'm going to do the same basic process. I'm going to pull frames, add the drone comb in, and do a quick inspection. But I'm looking in here just for how is this hive doing? Does it seem healthy? And then I'm going to do my equalizing. And what I'm doing here is, it's not easy to tell with this camera, but you can see bits of the paper stuck down in the very bottom, and so I'm just trying to fish it out. The bees will eventually get rid of it, but I'm just trying to do them a solid and get it out of there without making them too mad. But there we go, fishing out the paper. And this stuff is just like, you know, if you think about like 2-ply toilet paper, this would be the one ply. It's like it's all been chewed up and beat up. It's super thin. Okay, and now it's time to take a look. And you can see how sticky these things are. Like normally they would just slide around, but nope, not much on that one. Other downside is I had to put my smoker on the ground and my back has been hurting, so it's sitting there having to bend over and pick it up. I thought about putting it on the feeder, but then, you know, the bottom of the smoker can actually get pretty dang hot, and the last thing I want is to burn that wood or start a fire in there. Not that I think it really would, but that thing gets hot, so I'm going to set it on the ground and bend over repeatedly. So already this one has a lot more going on. You can see hive beetles in there, but the difference is that while you can see the hive beetles, there's a lot more bees to deal with them, and so that gives me confidence that, yeah, hive beetles took advantage of the fact that they were, you know, chilled out during the winter, but this hive has just a lot more stuff going on, so I think they're going to get rid of those beetles pretty dang quick. So I've decided to take this frame because it is full of pollen, and I'm going to give it to this weaker hive. Now, why didn't I just do a pollen patty? Well, pollen patties have all kinds of other stuff, so I'm going to try to give them the food without all the other stuff that's really attractive to the beetles. So that's why I gave them that frame. My hope is that by giving them that extra food, they will have more supplies to bounce back a little more quickly. So here we go. Put this drone comb in. There's this other concept about rotating out old wax. And your guidance is like something like every 3 to 5 years you want to cycle out the old wax. And the idea is that this brood wax, you can see how dark it is, and that's just from wear and tear. It's from just gross stuff being absorbed. It just absorbs everything, and so by cycling out this old dark comb and letting them build new stuff, you're kind of helping them with a little bit of hygiene. And so I'm pulling this wax out and cycling it a little bit, partially for that and partially because when I do splits, if I can give those splits some wax to work with, they will start off a lot stronger than having to build all their wax. It's been my experience that if you take a new hive of bees, whether it's a nuke, split, or package, and force them to build all the wax, they're probably not going to get that much done that year. They'll be just busy with that. But if you give them any amount of wax, then they'll be that much further ahead and they may start producing honey. So it's time for me to put on a pollen patty. So I'm fishing it out of these bags. So one side of this, the underside has holes in the paper. This side is solid. So I'm just going to peel that off. And you can see it just looks kind of sticky and gross. This is what I'm not putting in the weak hive because I don't want the hive beetles to get it. So I'm just going to cut this thing in half. And I don't feel like giving them a whole one. And when I was looking at how much to give, most people seem to think a half a patty is pretty good. And I think giving the patty now, when the hive is really starting to get active again, this just gives them that extra little bit of resources while the weather may be uncooperative so that they can grow. And then it's my job to just stay on top of feeding them. So now it's time to put the feeder in. I noticed it sticks to the bottom of the pollen, so I'm going to adjust that. And just slide it over. And now it is time to feed. So if I had seen that this hive, while it's much better off, if I had seen that it had a ton more brood and a ton more everything, I would have given them some of that too, but I wasn't seeing a lot of brood yet, so I was concerned that if I gave it brood, I would just be hurting this other hive too much, so that's why I only gave it the frame of pollen. Was to help that out. And then I gave this one the pollen patty. So the idea is this bigger hive will be able to deal with the hive beetles if they move in, and the other one already has them, so don't give them the pollen patty. Normally when I'm making syrup, I tend to be pretty specific about the ratio I use. This one I was not so specific. This syrup is probably too thin, but I don't know. So we're gonna shake off all these bees off that wax, and I'm gonna scrape the wax off. We would call this burr comb. Burr comb is when they build wax where we don't want them to. And so it could be little nubs of it, or it could be full-on things like this. And they do this because there was empty space to fill. While bees may not be entirely predictable, they are methodical, so they'll build in a way where they have just enough space to keep moving, and they'll fill the rest. So here we go, we're going to shake them. Look at all these bees flying around. They were a little testy with me the whole time I was doing all this, and that's natural. One of the first days they're out, the foragers were mostly still inside, which they're the testier ones. So here I am, you can't see it, but I just scraped off all that wax, and I will use that for a demonstration for the Cub Scouts coming up. So with that, those are the first two hives done. And so now I just need to pop this on, put the feed in, and the first two hives are done. Normally I would work the hives side by side because they're just there, it's convenient, but I'm working back to front because the hives with the metal tops are stronger than these because these are the ones that I made splits from. So I opened them up backwards than normal because I wanted to have the resources from these stronger hives for these weaker ones. So yeah, this is a lot of things that I've done. Normally when I come out I just do an inspection, and if I need to feed, I'll feed. This one was inspections, equalizing, pollen patties, drone comb, and all of that. So it was quite a lot of work to do with them. You know, I recorded this, well, everything I did with the bees I recorded, and it was like something like 30 minutes, which may sound like a lot, may not sound like a lot, but when I first started beekeeping, it would be like 30 minutes per hive to do anything. So while these are making kind of long videos, I get to watch and see how much more smoothly and quickly I do this. So now I've put it in super speed, so you don't have to go through everything again for the last two hives, but you do get to see what they're like. And so this hive, again, was really light when I checked it when I did the emergency feed, but it's really strong now. It's got bees everywhere. When I check it out, it's got lots of resources, and you'll be able to see in just a minute. But I'm going to do the same work for this one that I did for all the others. The difference is, whereas the hive that I first started with was really weak and struggling, this one that I thought was doing really, really well. So either it has recovered a lot, or I misjudged the weight of it when I checked it. But even that box I pulled off had honey in it. It felt heavy, which is a sign of collected nectar. Now underneath, you can see it just a little bit, but that dark, solid brown, that's capped brood. And so I've already seen there's a frame of capped brood, and I'm going to start seeing more and more, which means this hive as a population is about to explode. See, look at that. All capped brood. All those bees are going to hatch in the next few days, meaning this hive is going to be ready to go within a week, which is fantastic. I was worried about this one, and I don't have to worry at all. It's really strong. Why does this matter? Well, right now, it's early March, and so swarming season is coming up, and swarming season happens when the bees kind of come out of their winter lull, and they start laying eggs and getting ready, and their population explodes, and then they feel cramped in the limited space they've been given. When they feel cramped, they try to swarm, which is a way for honeybee hives to reproduce and replicate. So as a beekeeper, we want to split hives kind of right before they want to do that, so that they don't swarm and we get the benefit of getting new hives. So this hive will be ready to swarm pretty soon, in a couple weeks I think, which is exactly what I would expect. So by the end of this month I will be making splits and figuring out when to raise queens and all that, but instead of me worrying that this hive was too weak, no way. I will say one of the most annoying things about today was just how gummed up and stuck all these frames were. It was a lot of work, and I really made these bees mad when I was messing it all up. I kept bumping everything, and they kept flying in my face trying to sting me. This is actually the only hive that I smelled the attack pheromone from. The rest, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten stung, but this one for sure tried to sting me up in my face where I could smell it. That's all there is for that one. Super healthy. Grabbing that pollen patty that's left over. Gonna chuck that sucker in and feed it. That one's gonna be done. It's always a little tricky with this bucket to know, did I save enough for the last hive or not? I don't know why, but looking at a gallon of liquid in these buckets is not intuitive to me, so I'm like, oh no, too much, too little, will I not have enough for the other one? And in my head I'm also thinking, well, the other one's fine, it's already, I can tell it's strong just by how many bees are out flying from the front of it, but, you know, I'd like to be able to give it food, because this hive was a surprise, the other one could be too. Alright, last hive, here we go. Puffs of smoke in the front. That one popped off real easy. Not many bees up there, which normally would be alarming, but once again, looking in here, it looks pretty good. So put the feeder in, take this box off, and they had really gummed this one up. Like, it was just stuck. Set that there. Looking in, lots of bees, a little bit of paper. So if you had to guess, like this hive with the paper sitting on top and the hive behind it had paper sitting on top, that's because they're splits of one another. So the hives that are the two strongest were splits of one another. And I want to point that out because that's the kind of, maybe you could say that's the power of genetics, that not all honeybee queens are the exact same. So when I want to make queens from that one really productive hive, there's a reason why. This hive has always hung in there just fine, it's always had good population, but not produced much honey. So if I'm successful raising queens, all of the hives here will get the genetics of my one very productive hive. So you can see there's some honey on that, honey there, so that's encouraging. That means they have at least some food for going on. Pollen is the main food source I really want to see, but I'm excited to see any of it. It just means they're being productive, and that's good. So I'm starting to see this frame, I think, was covered in eggs, and you can see pollen towards the perimeter there. So super healthy looking frame. So seeing all of the eggs and then all of the pollen, that's good. This hive might be just a tiny bit behind compared to the other one, but it's off to a good start. So you can see all the capped brood there. More on this side. So again, my assessment is there may not be as many bees, but looking at the capped brood, looking at the food situation, there's nothing for me to worry about with this hive. It's ready to go. So that's me saying that's enough. I've seen eggs, larvae, capped brood. I've seen food. I'm fine with this hive in the conditions it's in. I don't need to do anything other than feed it and get out of there. Grab some more paper and drone comb. The first year I was able to successfully overwinter bees. It was amazing how much drone comb they had built and how goofy it looked. So then I thought, I want to try out these drone combs just to see if it keeps it orderly. And also, since I want to raise queens, the idea of me having a little more say over drones feels right, but we'll see how it goes. Cutting up another pollen patty. And so now we're going to put this pollen patty in, feed, close her up, and I think I'm going to be ready for a good year of beekeeping. Just got to keep an eye on that one first blue hive, but the rest are ready for a big year. So thanks for watching.